everyone that we are now going live on YouTube. Good afternoon. I am Jessica Carroll, the Interim Program Manager for Measure 110, and I will be assisting with facilitation for today's meeting. The Oversight and Accountability Council welcomes and encourages community input. Members of the public are invited to submit public comments or get on our interested parties email list by emailing oha.measure110@odhsoha.oregon.gov. That email address and more information about the council can be found on the Measure 110 OAC website. For more information or support with community engagement, you can contact Sydney McConnell. OAC members have asked that OHA and other staff who are present in the meeting space introduce themselves in the chat. Please share your role with the agency, and if you're a subject matter expert, your area of expertise. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dharma, today's facilitator.
Hi, folks. Welcome. Today, I'm just going to call the agenda before we do our attendance, but today's pretty straightforward. We have a tribal grant template discussion and vote. We have some grant extensions to go over and vote on, and then some OHA updates, and that is it. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Cindy to do attendance.
Thanks, Dharma. It's nice to see everybody. Annalise here. I'm just going to let her in real quick. When I say your name, please say here for the record. Amy?
Here.
Hey, Amy. Carlos?
Here.
Hi, Carlos. Caroline?
Here.
Hi, Caroline. Dharma?
Here.
Hey, Dharma. Hubert? Hubert, you there? I'll come back to Hubert. Hunter let us know that he would not be here today. Jackie Mercer?
Here.
Hi, Jackie. Jaren?
Here.
Hi, Jaren. Keisha? Keisha, you there? All right, I'll come back to Keisha too. Leticia?
I'm here.
Hi, Leticia. Linda?
Here.
Hi, Linda. Melinda?
Here.
Hi, Melinda. Meredith?
Hello. Here.
Hi, Meredith. Morgan?
Hi.
No Morgan yet. Nicole?
Here.
Hey, Nicole. Onisha?
Hey.
Onisha,
Here.
you there? Oh, there you go.
Yeah, you gotta give me a second.
No problem. Ron?
Here.
Hi, Ron. Ryan let us know he would be a few minutes late today. Sabrina?
I'm here.
Hi, Sabrina. Zeb?
I'm here.
Hi, Zeb. Annalise? Oh, I see Annalise is here in the chat.
Yep, here. Sorry.
Yeah, hi, Annalise. No problem. Jackie Fabric?
Here.
Hey, Jackie. And then just going back to Hubert. Keisha?
Here.
Hey, Keisha. And then I don't think Morgan has joined. I don't see Morgan yet. And Ryan will be late. So we're good with 18 present.
Thanks. Template.
Hey, Dharma, you're cutting out pretty heavily. I will go
Sorry,
ahead.
can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry about that. So I was just gonna pass it off to you anyways, Jessica, so.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. All right, so the first thing on our agenda today is the tribal grant template vote. As you all are aware, we need you to approve grant templates. And so today we have the tribal specific template for the extension. We emailed that to you yesterday, so it is in your email. Hopefully you got a chance to take a look at it. It is a legal document. Next slide, please. Would anyone like to declare a conflict of interest? And I can read the slide if you, Dharma, yes.
I have an actual conflict of interest with Confederate Tribes of Siletz Indians.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with an actual or potential conflict of interest?
Yes, I do. Caroline, do I?
I'm not really sure anymore.
Okay.
I mean, I honestly don't know. Because I thought my role was to represent all tribes. Because we can't just leave one tribe out or one NARA out. So I don't think we have conflict because we're not actually, we're doing it aggregated for the whole tribes. And then it's up to Julie Johnson to meet with us and how it's divided. However, we did submit actual numbers.
Oh.
Did we not, Jessica?
You did, and those numbers have been voted on.
Yeah.
Yep.
So are we just, we're just going to approve the template, right? And what to use for the extension language?
Yep, this is just the template.
So I don't think we have a conflict, Jackie.
Without the numbers? Sorry,
Yeah,
Jessica.
we're just looking at the template and what it looks like,
Okay.
which I'm not even sure if it's legal or not, to be quite honest, because that's a sovereignty issue. Because of the fact that every tribe has a right to use their own template if they want. So they start with this template and then it's up to OHA to initiate it. And then if a tribe decides that they don't like the template, then they could then rebuttal it. And it's an individual per tribe. We've never really actually used templates for tribes. But in this case, the reason why, I'm on here is just to make sure it's not anything that might violate the sovereignty. I didn't see anything in it that would do that. So, but understanding that a tribe can say, I don't like the template, and then we have no say so. Mhm. So
All right.
I don't believe we have a conflict
Okay.
with that understanding. That is still up to the individual tribes.
Right. I mean, maybe it could be a potential, but maybe not actual. So I'm just going to go ahead, Jessica.
Well, I was just going to say you can declare a potential if that's what you want to do. Again, we can always call the Oregon Government Ethics Commission outside of the meeting. And so if you choose to declare a potential, that is your decision. We can't, because we're the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, we can't render advice on this, unfortunately.
Okay. And you know what, Norman, they're on speed dial for me. So I'm always making sure I'm where I need to be. So I just, it depends on what in this document, that's the real issue. If it's got our name, NARA's name and amount, then I feel like that's a conflict. If it's like the bigger picture template, then I don't see that as a conflict.
So we are just voting on the template.
Okay, then I don't see nothing. I mean, I'm sorry. We're
That's okay.
formal here. I think fine. Thank you.
Okay, so no conflicts. Okay, none to declare. So Dharma, you declared one. All right. So as a reminder, these are the tribal burn recipients, set aside recipients. Next slide, please. Here is a draft motion for if you would like to approve the grant extension template. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Meredith.
I move to approve the form of tribal
You know
grant
the name of the, motel?
extension template presented today, which was sent to the OAC ahead of the meeting.
All
I'll
right.
second it.
And we have
I'll
a
second it.
Okay, well, we have a second by Amy. Thanks, Nicole. Appreciate it. So we have a motion by Meredith. We have a second by Amy. Any further discussion? Dharma, is your hand up for discussion?
Nope.
Okay, I can lower it for you. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Sydney?
Okay. Motion to approve the grant extension template. Amy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Carlos?
Yes.
Caroline?
Yes.
Dharma declared an actual conflict. Hubert?
Yes.
And Hunter is not here. Jackie, you declared a potential. Would you still like to vote?
Yes, and that's my
your-
vote.
Your vote. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jaren?
Yes.
Tisha?
Yes.
Leticia?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Melinda?
Yes.
Meredith?
Yes.
Morgan?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Onisha? Onisha, are you there? I'll come back to Onisha. Ron?
Yes.
Let's see. Don't think Ryan has made it yet. Nope. Sabrina?
Yes.
Zeb?
Yes.
And then circling back to Onisha? All right, without Onisha's vote, that still passes with 16 yes votes. Back to you guys.
Folks, I'm gonna pass it back to Jessica now for our grant extensions.
Awesome. Thank you, Dharma. We actually only have one grant extension today. This is the very, very last one. Next slide. And so this the grant extension is for Providence in Newburgh. Is that on the, there we go, Newburgh, which is in Yamhill County. Can we go back to the previous slide, please? Would anyone like to declare a potential or actual conflict of interest with Providence in Yamhill County? All right, hearing none, we'll move on. All right, again, these are the same slides I think you've seen probably 10 or 11 times. I'm not going to read through them. We followed the same grant extension process that we have for every other grantee. We can scroll through them kind of slow. So the reason why this is the last grantee, I think you remember they came and did a presentation for you, and then it just took us a minute to, get their extension done. But this is our very last extension, and that is the total 36-month NTE for Providence Newburgh Medical Center. Next slide, please. Here is a proposed motion or a motion that you could use if you are so inclined.
This is Amy. I'd like to make a motion. I move to extend the grant agreement of the organization and dollar amount listed on slide 6 through June 30th of 2025.
I'll second.
Thank you, Amy. So we have and Meredith. So we have a motion from Amy, a second from Meredith. Do we have any discussion? All right, hearing none. Sydney?
Okay, motion to extend that grant agreement. Amy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Carlos?
Yes.
Caroline?
Yes.
Caroline? Dharma?
Yes.
Hubert?
Yes.
Jackie?
Yes,
Jaren?
Yes.
Keisha? Keisha, you want to vote? Come back to Keisha. Leticia?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Melinda?
Yes.
Meredith?
Yes.
Morgan?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Onisha? Oh, looks like we lost Onisha. Ron?
Yes.
Let's see. Ryan, it's not here yet. Sabrina?
Yes.
Zeb?
Yes.
All right, and then going back to Keisha
Yes.
and did Onisha come back? No, Onisha still. Okay, that passes with 17 yes votes.
Awesome. Thank you, folks. And that's it for stuff we had, except for some OHA updates. So I'll pass it back to Jessica.
Thanks, Dharma. Thank you, everyone. So a couple of OHA updates here. First is the tri-chair election is happening at the next meeting. So if we have some folks who have reached out saying that they were interested, please consider becoming interested. If you want to be a tri-chair, we have 2 seats open. Onisha and Dharma's terms are both coming to an end on March 25th. So you'll have plenty of time to get in there and learn about what it means to be a tri-chair and do some of that warm handoff stuff. So really excited. Time did fly. You are right, Sabrina. Time did fly. So I know, so if you haven't already thought about interest, I encourage you to. And it sounds like we're going to have a great pool of candidates for y'all to look at. Sabrina.
Did you say that people were going to say their interest in the next council meeting?
Yeah, I think that, well, that's when we're going to vote. We'll just do it the way we always have. I think just some folks have just expressed interest already. So.
Okay, can you say how many? About, do you think?
Well, I know Dharma. I think Carlos has expressed interest.
We've had 8 altogether who at some point between the last election and today have expressed interest.
I just want to say that is amazing.
You don't want to volunteer again for a third time?
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for, I know it's a little extra work, but it really does help this council move forward and get a lot of business done. So thank you for that. I just wanted to possibly, for our last update, give anyone who was at that symposium on Monday just the opportunity to talk a little bit about what that was and what happened on Monday. I thought it was pretty cool. Morgan, I was hoping you were going to come on camera because you were amazing. So if you want to give, I think it's like food for the soul sometimes to hear nuanced conversations. So if you want to go ahead and tell people what happened, I think that would be amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So they convened researchers from all over the state, actually all over the country, to present on various Measure 110 related research. That was the name of the symposium. But some of the findings that I found most interesting, so they did a survey, and I actually got to help with some parts of this, but they went all over the state. So 8 counties, Coos Bay, Umatilla, Lane. Well, no, I mean, I'm not going to get it right. 8 counties, urban, rural. And they surveyed 468 Oregonians who use drugs. Most of the people were homeless. And so they just sort of got this like random cross section of Oregonians who use drugs. And asked them a whole bunch of questions about themselves, about drug overdose, their drug use, housing. And from that, there were some really interesting findings. And so what I presented on specifically was overdose. And in the data that I saw, people, Oregonians, no matter what drugs they use, they're witnessing 5 overdoses a year right now. Fentanyl users average 8 witnessed overdoses. Meth users average 4 witnessed overdoses. And there was huge differences in who is giving naloxone. So opioid users, very likely to give naloxone. Meth users, very unlikely to administer naloxone. But the state is doing something right. 71% of everyone that they talked to did have at least 1 dose of Narcan on them, which are in their possession, which I thought was actually pretty cool. And then there was a very critical finding that if the person reported having been incarcerated in the past 12 months, they were twice as likely to have reported an overdose. And if the more incarceration episodes they had, the more likely they were to have overdosed in this like dose-dependent relationship. And that's something we've seen in research studies from around the country, but that's really the first time it's been shown in like an Oregon jail population, where even very brief episodes of incarceration really dramatically increase the risk of overdose. And then another super interesting finding from the housing panel that Dr. Esther Chen presented on was, of all those people that they surveyed, so homeless, drug-using Oregonians mostly, the average length of time that they'd lived in Oregon was 24 years. And I actually got to see inside some of that data. So 92% of everyone that they talked to had been living in Oregon at least 3 years. But yeah, the vast majority were longtime Oregonians, and specifically were actually from the region in which they were found. So if they were talking to the person in Roseburg, they were from the Roseburg area. If they were talking to the person in Coos Bay, they were from the Coos Bay area, or had moved there at some point 5, 10, 15, 20 years in the past for work, or to move in with their sister or their brother, and then fell into hard times and then ended up homeless. And that really closely mirrors a study that came out in August in California, where they talked to thousands of people experiencing homelessness in California, and found that about 70% of everyone they talked to was from the same county in which they were currently experiencing homelessness. And that sounds probably pretty, I mean, like, we like familiarity. People live where they find it comfortable, and it's pretty hard to move across the country. That's pretty expensive. So people experiencing incredible poverty don't tend to do that very much. Yeah, and so for actual overdoses, also fentanyl users are averaging 3 non-fatal overdoses in their lifespan. But I thought that the non-fatal overdose rate, so it's like, just to put this in perspective, I did some math. If they talked to 468 people who were witnessed 5 overdoses, just in that group, there's something like 2,300 non-fatal overdoses reported in the past year. And if that's just a tiny fraction of the people using drugs in Oregon, there was a Portland State researcher who presented like really incredible criminal justice data that I'd never seen before, that showed that the estimated population of drug users in Oregon is something like people with like a illicit substance use disorder was over 300,000. And that even at its peak, the highest year on record, Oregon arrested 23,000 people for drug possession in a given year. So that was like a small, like 6 or 7% of all illicit drug users got arrested in a given year. And then at its peak, there was only 1,300 people in drug court, in any type of specialty court, whether that was for drug possession or start court for property crime. The most amount of people Oregon ever had in drug court was 1,300. And so when she had this cool chart, I can send this stuff out too. I have the presentations. It's kind of a lot though, so it's a little bit hard to curate, but like, especially the 2-pager that I have, y'all should just read it. It's super interesting. But the point was, like, out of every illicit drug user, even at its peak, less than 1% of people were being offered drug court like less than 1% of people addicted to drugs in a given year were ever even being entered into drug court, much less being successful through drug court. And that drug court is not an operation that can be scaled up because it's specifically designed for high risk, high need priorities, and it's resource intensive. So I'll send those presentations out, that the Portland State on criminal justice, the overdose one that I did. And then there was like a qualitative one because they also interviewed 32 of the survey respondents, and just like the quotes, them sharing about their lives and their experience of homelessness and drug use, really profound. So I hope that everyone gets a chance to check some of that out. And they looked at the CDC NYU thing that analyzed Oregon's overdose rate in comparison to its other states. Shows that we're essentially on a similar track. Had the pretty unfortunate finding that once fentanyl becomes the dominant opioid in a drug supply, overdoses usually increase almost exponentially for 7 or 8 years. And if Oregon holds to that pattern, that means we have at least 4 more years of dramatic year-over-year increase before our numbers even level off. Sorry, I got a phone call. Yeah, and so there's a lot of things like comparing us to other states, because you can't really look at us in a vacuum. It needs to look at like other state and national trends. Did I forget anything, Jessica? What else did you see?
I mean, I saw some really amazing, you were on a panel talking about, the population of Oregon in comparison to Washington and California.
Oh, yes.
And I mean, it just was all really good to hear. As soon as we get, and Morgan, if you just want to send that stuff to Sydney, we can send it out to everyone and make sure everyone gets it. And, you can take what you want and leave what you don't. But it was pretty amazing. Are you willing to take some questions, Morgan?
Absolutely.
All right, Hubert.
Hello, Melissa. So, I mean, how y'all doing? So, I'm sitting, those are some incredible numbers, right? Scary numbers. And what I'm seeing politically in Oregon is that they want to criminalize drug use again, right? I'm seeing that the legislature wants to pass laws to send people to jail for drugs. And it's incredible to me because that's not going to solve the problem. That's going to create more problems, because if you say those numbers like 300,000 and the lowest numbers like 23,000, they don't have the capacity to arrest everybody that's out here using fentanyl, right? Or drugs, period. They're going to mass arrest or trying to arrest everybody if they pass these laws, and you're going to have overcrowding, and you're going to and then the people, because I know what that looks like when the government said we want to arrest everybody using drugs. I was in that in the war on drugs before. It's not going to work. And it's going to be a mess. And I'm also wondering about, so if they do want to criminalize drugs again, how is that going to affect Measure 110 going forward? That's what I had.
Hubert, that is not a question for me.
I just am putting that out there really for the council, really.
Yeah, I have the same question about that. There are legislative proposals and ballot proposals that are altering the fundamental structure of the underpinnings that have created this council. So that is a big question. But yeah. Does anyone have questions about research, though, before I pass it back to Jessica to answer that big question?
This is Melinda. Hi. So I was just kind of wondering, did they touch on how the attorneys are already backed up, if they're going to be handing out tickets again? I mean, taking people to jail, like people that are already going to jail have sitting in jail for 30 days without seeing an attorney.
Yeah, so the criminal justice researchers, they sort of traced every shift in Oregon's policing and drug policy over time, showing how different things were impacted. There's been a steady decline in our drug possession and drug delivery arrests. That's long predates Measure 110. Actually, it started in 2015. Between 2015 and 2019, arrests dropped by half already. So it's this continuing trend. But those researchers also talked about the public defense shortage. So there's been like other profound shifts to Oregon law that have impacted law enforcement. So the first thing was the Boyd deliveries, which were affected by the Hubble court decision, which said that the state can't just consider possession with intent and call that a drug delivery. Because for a long time, we didn't have like possession with intent. They would just call it delivery if they thought that you were maybe going to sell drugs. They called it the exact same charge as if you had actually sold drugs. And the Oregon Supreme Court said that that was unconstitutional, that something that might happen in the future is not the same as something that has happened. And so that restricted delivery to being literal delivery. And the legislature is also dealing with that, trying to amend that to widen the scope of delivery to again include possession with intent to distribute. So that's like one thing that dropped off. The unavoidable lull decision, where traffic stops, the cops couldn't like ask a bunch of probing questions to try to like catch you in a lie and search your car. That was prohibited by the Oregon Supreme Court. Measure 110. And then on their chart, they showed the public defense crisis, right? Because we know the Multnomah County DA at least has a dashboard on his website where they're showing how many cases are getting dismissed. Both misdemeanors and serious felonies are getting dismissed because there are no public defenders to take them. And so they're essentially having to triage severity of cases going through the criminal justice system because people are constitutionally entitled to legal defense. And if the state cannot provide that legal defense because we don't have enough public defenders, that is resulting in dismissals. So that is a huge issue. We can't even deal with what we already have in the system. So thinking about turning thousands more people into it has the public defenders very nervous, and the criminal justice researchers pointed that out repeatedly. They're coming from a research perspective, so they're not making political statements. They're just saying, according to the data that we have available, arresting people for drug possession will not benefit and could create harm in XYZ ways, particularly with capacity issues in the justice system. So, and I think we all know that there aren't treatment resources available to people who are asking for them. So in these discussions about whether or not to mandate people to treatment, they're sort of talking about something that doesn't really exist because people asking for treatment also can't get it. And that's something that came up a lot in interviews. Oh, another finding from the housing, because I hear people say this, they'll be like, these homeless people, they don't even want to be housed. They like being homeless. 92% of all the people who were homeless said that they did want housing, but like 71% said that they did not know where to go to get that. And only a tiny fraction of people were actually able to attain housing that sought it out. So that's another huge gap. There's this huge disparity into people who want housing, people are seeking it out, and then only like 8% of people are actually getting housing. Any other questions?
Yeah, I was, thank you for this, Morgan. I was curious if they had talked about the disproportionate impact of those overdose rates on communities of color, or across race lines too. And then I'm just curious if there was any discussion about why there's kind of this like tacit, like just people are ignoring the science, right? That like it increases overdose to incarcerate people, and that's a fact. I'm just wondering if there was any conversation about like the politicization of like medical facts here.
Yeah, so they definitely did talk about racial disparities in overdose. The sample size for the Oregon population was a little small. The sample was very heavily BIPOC when compared to the demographics of the state, but I didn't see it broken down by race. That's a great question, and I will ask that. But the researchers presented on the national data showed the just absolutely incredibly disproportionate overdose rates among Indigenous people and Black Americans, and that those are also some of the fastest rising. They're the highest absolute rates. They're skyrocketing. And those racial disparities in drug overdose are essentially the accumulation of various racial disparities throughout all of our systems. And I would probably, that's a great question though. I should ask if they can run that data for Oregon specifically. And as to the politicization of fact, public policy has never particularly been grounded in fact. And if we look back through the history of American drug policy, this is very evident. There is no law that says that policy must be guided by hard fact or evidence. So therefore, it is governed by the elected representatives that we have chosen to represent us, and or by popular vote. This widening gap, it seems, between what the research says we should do and what we actually do is a very present topic of conversation in research, because if no one's ever going to actually implement the research, what's the point of doing it? Is sort of the thought. But I stand by the fact that facts matter, that research matters, that this is important. And so I hope that my colleagues continue to do this work and release this information out into the world. What can we do as citizens, as residents of this state, to try to close that gap between research and policy? You know, engage civically, talk to your legislators. Yeah, I'm convinced that facts still matter, even if we're in a moment where it might feel like they don't.
I would really support our media subcommittee looking into drafting a statement about that research and putting it out there for the public, because I think that we have a responsibility to act as a liaison between this kind of data and our communities. If it's not getting out through other means, then I think that, you know, we should empower ourselves and get that actual information to people, so they understand what's at stake here.
Dharma, I think that's a great idea. I understand that we cannot make political or partisan statements, but it would be very simple to go through some of the high-level findings of that research symposium and how they relate to the work that we are doing. I hope that we can do that. Any other research questions?
I don't see any. I see Jackie's hand. I think she's going to answer the big question. But thank you, Morgan. Again, you were amazing. You did so good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Morgan. And thank you for sharing all of that information with us. I'm very impressed with the numbers you're able to keep in your head.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. One thing. Is Kristen on this call?
Yeah.
Kristen is such a good speaker. She presented on behalf of OHA. I would love, can she maybe share some of what she presented? I'd seen her in these meetings many times, but presenting to 600 people is very different than talking in one of these meetings. And I was absolutely blown away by her presentation and her speaking. And I would just like to thank OHA for actually coming to that research symposium and presenting the facts behind so much of what we were talking about. So thank you.
Thanks, Morgan. It was really an honor to represent this work. And I kept my presentation to all of the great providers that this council has funded, really trying to unpack the kinds of services Measure 110 offers and how they are services that are really not funded otherwise by Medicaid or by insurance. But you know, they're all the important things like housing and transportation and food and harm reduction and peer support that are so critical to keeping people safe, getting people into recovery, supporting them throughout what recovery looks like for them, and some of the really just innovative models that are happening across the state, and kind of just sharing some of the Q4 data that we've published to our website, kind of showing progressively how Measure 110 is reaching more and more people in Oregon, and really filling in those gaps in the continuum of care that are traditionally just, there's no one else to pay for them except for Measure 110. So really highlighting the importance of these dollars at filling those gaps.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. I mean, so just to so Kristen's there talking about all these things that aren't otherwise funded, with like some actual tangible examples of good work in the community. I mean, housing pregnant mothers who otherwise would have nowhere else to go, researchers from a variety of perspectives, from housing to addiction medicine, to drug policy and criminal justice. There was even a police officer who spoke, and the consensus was there are not data that say that arresting people for drug possession would help anything at all. There is an abundance of research that shows that it may harm. But then most of all, it was just really cool to actually see some of the effects, like what Kristen talked about, and then Dr. Hoover presented on peers. Measure 110 funds are one of the main drivers of a doubling of our peer workforce, like in a very short amount of time. Was it 2 or 3 years? Somebody said, keeping all these numbers in my head, I have a limit though. Like in 2 or 3 years, our peer workforce has doubled. There's just like tens of thousands of treatment encounters occurring. People are getting housed. And that's all. So it's just like this very holistic portrayal of it. Thanks again, Kristen. That was really cool. I'm so glad that OHA participated. Okay. I'm going to shut up now and turn off my camera and my phone and drive home.
Thank you, Morgan. Jackie, did you want to answer the larger question that was posed in the beginning for us, please?
Okay, so there was a question about legislation, what, you know, I'm sure we're all aware of, there's some different proposals coming out for legislative session. We're about to enter Oregon's short legislative session, which is essentially the month of February, going into the beginning of March. And Measure 110, we have been informed, will be a focus. OHA is monitoring legislative concepts. Our Measure 110 team is monitoring the Measure 110 legislative concepts that we hear about before the bills drop. And then once the bills drop, we'll be really closely monitoring as well. We can't predict, unfortunately, what's going to happen, what's going to be the outcome of the session, or how these bills are going to end up as they work their way through the session. I believe that OHA will likely be asked to present before legislative committees. Those are by invitation. So if we get those invitations, then we'll work to be putting together information just like Kristen did for the presentation on Monday, and like we have in past sessions, to put together the data, the information, the facts that we have available going into those meetings. But that's essentially the information that we have right now, without being able to guess what's going to happen during this session. But we know it's going to be active and busy, and that this is the top of people's minds.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So that is what we have for our OHA updates. Dharma, I'll pass it back to you to close us out?
I don't have anything else. Thanks, folks, for your hard work, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Oh, Morgan. Oh, Ron.
Hello. I'm back. I'm at the gas station now. So for the legislative concept that was unveiled yesterday, we have until the first week of February to submit public comment. That's all. So if you have any feelings about this, we have a democratic process, and I would encourage you to pop the gas tank. I'm being told. Yeah, so I'll send out all the things right after this call, and then Sydney will get that to you. And I think that should be included in public comment because facts matter. That's all. Bye-bye.
Ron's hand is up.
Oh, thanks, Morgan.
I think she may
Ronald?
have actually addressed what I was going to say, which is that the joint committee yesterday unveiled the proposals. There were these two very detailed PowerPoints that they presented. And there's also a staff summary of the proposals. And I think it would be worth people's while to take a look at those. I've shared those with Jessica, and I don't know if she's able to share them with you, but I know that I can't share them with you. I can direct you to Ola's, but I did share them with Jessica, who may or may not be able to share them with you all as attachments that I've shared with her.
Thanks, Ron. I did receive that. Jessica will do her due diligence and if possible, will share. If not, we can always give directions to where to find possibly. I will defer to other smarter folks on that. Oh, well, there you go, Sydney. Okay. Thanks. Bye. Be safe, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.